What's going on, Colts Nation? I appreciate you joining me for another video where in this one I want to talk about the highly anticipated quarterback competition. And we're just sitting here waiting for Shane Steichen to talk to the media. He'll be doing that tomorrow. From what I heard, it'll probably be late morning. So before we actually able to see what he says, we're going to, he's going to tell the media. The media is immediately going to put it all over Twitter. And then we'll have that information. Hopefully I'm able to get that information to you guys before I have to go to my day job tomorrow. I think I will be able to do that, but just hopeful. And so what we're going to talk about here is kind of what's going into this, kind of what both sides of it, right? You're talking about Daniel and talking about Anthony and both of these guys and kind of what they've done and so far everything from training camp to the preseason games, like this thing really has stayed neck and neck, right? And you have Daniel Jones, who has plenty of experience both in college and in the NFL, plenty of playing experience, which is definitely a leg up that he has on Anthony. And that's one thing that, for everything that goes into this, that's one thing that really hampers Anthony in what he's able to do. But I think as we continue to go along, right? Anthony just turned 23 years old a couple months ago. And I think we're seeing a guy who, as he's continued to get reps, we continue to see him get better. Now, we talked about so much last year about with Anthony, you need him to go into the offseason healthy so that he can have an offseason where he can actually work to get better, right? He had the year from college to the NFL where he had to work on combine training, and then it was just boom, coming to the NFL, getting fed information, through a fire hose essentially. And then, of course, after his first season, he had the shoulder injury, so he wasn't really able to do work through a lot of the offseason, right, even through mini camps and whatnot. So he went into training camp and was essentially a rookie again, right? And so last year, obviously, didn't go well, finishes a year, being benched at one point, comes back in, plays well in some parts, and then other parts still making mistakes. And you're going to have that with the inexperience. You're going to have that with the reps. That stuff matters, right? And then with Daniel Jones, you have one good season throughout his career. He was able to take the Giants to the playoffs. And of course, in Daniel Jones' case, over there with the Giants, just not a well-run organization. There at the end of Eli Manning's career, and then, of course, at the beginning of Daniel Jones' career, just not a well-run organization. Not a good job drafting over Daniel Jones' career there, and that team just not very good. So it's hard to evaluate Daniel Jones, but I think even what you're seeing so far in training camp and what we've seen so far in the preseason games, like Daniel Jones just kind of is what Daniel Jones is. And what that's really the big difference is that, one of these guys, there's going to be more risk that is inevitably going to come with Anthony Richardson. He's going to take chances with throws that Daniel Jones won't, right? But that also comes with the incredible plays, right? And I'm not going to sit here and say that Anthony is Andrew Luck by any stretch of the imagination, but you did get a little bit of that with Andrew Luck, and I like that quality. That's one thing that always drew me to Brett Favre, is that Brett Favre was willing to make the throws that other people aren't. And sometimes that backfires, but sometimes you end up with incredible moments, right? Incredible game-winning drives because he's not afraid to make the play. So overall, like, you're getting two quarterbacks who physically are more similar than I think people would really give Daniel Jones credit for. Of course, Anthony Richardson physically is incredible, and he's strong, he's fast, he's big, all of those things. But for Daniel Jones, he's a big guy. He's fast, obviously not as strong as Anthony Richardson. He's not as built as Anthony Richardson. Of course, Anthony Richardson slimmed down a little bit, which I think overall can kind of help his game and help his development. So going into this conversation, right, this competition is so polarizing, and it was always going to be. The moment we signed Daniel Jones, I think the whole world knew how this competition was going to go, and so far hasn't disappointed, right, from everybody's expectations. And for good or bad, of course, a lot of people would think that's a negative, but I think competition can make both of these guys better, right? And you have Daniel Jones, who I think got much needed experience in a different organization last year when he went and spent time with Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings. So that's something that definitely helps him, right? Kevin O'Connell, you see what he's done with every quarterback that he's had to implement into his offense up there with the Minnesota Vikings. And for the most part, the success that he has, right? Somebody who's very quarterback friendly up there in Minnesota. And so I think Daniel Jones, the experience of going there definitely helped him. So there's definitely an argument to be made where it would make sense for Daniel Jones to be the starter. Like, I'm not saying that. And I've been steadfast on the fact that I've always been a Daniel Jones guy, but admittedly didn't watch all the Giants games. I have a best friend who he's told me year in and year out, like, can't stand to watch Daniel Jones, and he hasn't. With as bad as the Giants have been, like, he doesn't always just sit down and watch Giants games anymore because of how it's been, right? So I think there's obviously been a lot of discourse both ways with Daniel Jones. And at the end of the day, like, if you get Daniel Jones, like, you again, you kind of know what you're going to get, but it's going to be less fun to watch, which sucks. But like, see, and it's tough. I want to say, like, he's going to move the ball up and down the field, but if you're throwing for short gains and the defense starts to know that, then where does that come into play? And how much are you really, like, being less risk averse is both a negative and a positive. Like, again, that's what makes, and I'm sure for Shane, what makes this decision so tough is that you see positives from both of these guys, you see negatives from both of these guys, and trying to weigh those and think what's going to be the best thing for the team. And I'm somebody who, like, I just believe that if you want to do what's best for the team, then I think you go with Anthony Richardson. With what he's shown, the progress that he's shown is so promising, right? And of course, where we sit right now, like, I think either way, you're probably winning roughly the same amount of games with both quarterbacks. But I think there's a good point to be made, and I've seen, both Colts fans, Colts media make this same point where, as if you start Anthony Richardson, then if it's not going well throughout the season, then you can go to Daniel Jones. If you start with Daniel Jones, you're in a position where you're essentially saying the Anthony Richardson experiment is done. And, like, how do you go back to him at that point, right? How do you go back to Anthony Richardson? And then at that point, if you're going to start Daniel Jones, then do you try to find a way where you can trade Anthony Richardson, right? And both of these guys have dealt with injuries through their career, so I don't think that's going to be something that seriously happens. But I think it'd be an interesting idea to explore if you go away from Anthony Richardson. But, as much as I've always been a Daniel Jones guy, I've always been like, hey, get him away from the Giants, he'll be good. Really wish he didn't come to my team, because I do think all these Giants keep leaving New York and becoming good players elsewhere and great players elsewhere. But I'm just in the camp of, like, go back to Chris Ballard when we first drafted Anthony Richardson, and the Colts were doing their what was it, behind the scenes? I can't remember what they call it, but basically, behind the scenes of the draft. And you had Chris Ballard talking about, is it a risk taking Anthony at 4? Yes, but I don't want to pass on him and then watch him be great somewhere else. And that's where I'm at with this, is like, I don't want to give up on Anthony now when he's worked on things that he needed to work on. And seemingly through the process so far this offseason, like, the things that he worked on, we're seeing come into fruition, right? So it's like, do you give up on that now and go away from that? Like, it's a tough decision to make, and I feel like Shane could be in the mindset of, like, hey, listen, his rookie year, we shouldn't have started him week 1. We shouldn't have made him a captain in year 1. We should have let him sit for a while. We should have let him figure out how to be a pro. We should have let him develop. If he doesn't get injured, his rookie year, by year 3, things could look a lot different, right? So throughout that, right, Gardner Minshew ended up playing the whole year anyways. We missed the playoffs anyways. Like, Gardner should have, as we look back on hindsight's 2020, me along with a lot of other Colts fans wanted Anthony to be the guy early on and to be the starter. Hey, this guy needs reps, so let's get him reps. And then he ends up getting hurt in the 4th or the 6th game that year, whatever it may be. And now we're sitting in a place where, hey, maybe it would be a good thing for Anthony Richardson to continue to develop, hey, let's make sure he's not going to be on the field getting hurt. He can continue to develop and get better. And of course, he's in his 3rd year. You have another year on his rookie contract and his 5th year option, potential franchise tag after that, which franchise tag for quarterback would be insane. So you're only franchise tagging him if you think he's a guy. But nonetheless, right, I feel like part of Shane's decision could come down to, we messed up in the beginning of this thing, and we got the guy hurt when he wasn't even ready to be the quarterback. And now we're in a spot where we have a guy who could be a serviceable one, right? We're probably not making the playoffs with Daniel Jones, and that's just the truth of the situation, just with what we've seen through his career, with what we've seen so far with him. Like, Daniel Jones is what Daniel Jones is. So I feel like, especially with the injuries that we have that are going to factor into how we perform this season, Daniel Jones, I just don't think he'll lead us to the playoffs. I do think that with Anthony Richardson, it could go one of 2 ways. It could not go well, and we end up in a bad position where we miss the playoffs, and we end up in a position where we can draft a quarterback next year, right? And if you're going to do that, you want to be as high up in that draft order as humanly possible, right? So that even if you're going to try to trade up, you're in a better position with your first-round pick to try to trade up. Or Anthony, with everything that he can do, the amount of upside that he has, the things that he's worked on, the things that he's already great at, the things that he's continuing to work on and get better as he continues to get reps through the season, could continue to see him get better. And with the talent that's on this team, as we get healthier through this season, then by the end of the season, able to really try to make a run at getting into the playoffs and trying to surprise people once the playoffs start. So I think ultimately, man, this is going to be a difficult decision. Having to wait this long on what Shane's going to say, not ideal. But at the end of the day, I think ultimately Anthony would be the best decision to start week 1 against the Dolphins. Because, again, if you need to go away from Anthony, you can go to Daniel Jones. But you need Anthony to get the reps if you're ever going to find out if he's a guy. Now, like, you can't go backwards, right? Going back to how Anthony didn't get reps or didn't get the grace his rookie year of being able to develop as the second guy on the depth chart. Right, his rookie year would have been the time where you sit him behind a veteran guy and let him learn and let him develop, let him figure out the system, let him figure out how to practice, let him figure out how to watch film and how to be a pro and all those things, and then have a real developmental period in that first real offseason of his NFL career, right? And all that stuff got pushed back, but you can't go backwards, right? So I think we're in a position where Shane would be smart and the organization would be smart to start with Anthony Richardson. I think that's the way to go. I know there are going to be people in the comments that don't feel the same way, and that's okay, right? I'm not gonna be mad at you guys for thinking Daniel Jones is a guy. I just have like a rational argument for it, right? Like, just have a rational argument for it. There are people that say, "Oh, Daniel Jones is QB1." For this, and this. There was a video we had the other day. Somebody said something in the comments that just was categorically false from what we saw in the preseason game. Right, like if you have an argument for it, have an argument, and I'm fine with that. right? And of course, if you're in the comments, be respectful to each other. We're all on the same team here. We're all in this thing together. So ultimately, of course, I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear what your guys' opinions of this is. Again, Shane should have his decision tomorrow. At least that's what we're all thinking, is that there's going to be a decision on this thing tomorrow. And when that news comes out, I'll let you guys know as soon as I possibly can. And if there's any part of this that I missed out on, again, let me know down in the comment section. And if you enjoy the content, make sure to hit the like button. Make sure you guys are subscribed with notifications on. When there's an update, I will get you guys content as soon as I possibly can, whether it's in the form of a video like this or in the form of a short, whatever it may be, whether it's tomorrow or later this week or after the third preseason game. We're going to continue to drop content. We're going to continue to have updates as soon as they come out. So again, subscribe, have notifications on, and I'll get you guys content as soon as possible. And of course, I appreciate you stopping by for another video. And as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and go Colts.